Greetings, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are. Well, today's the day. We're drawing names for the 2 lucky winners. Remember, second place gets $50 and first place gets $100. So, my screen looks a little weird to you right now, and that is because I am recording this so you can see the process as it happens. Cool? This is the site, YouTube Random Comment Picker, that I will be using to draw the lucky names, excuse me. So, let's go over here. I am going to pull up this video's URL. And we are going to paste it right here into the Random Comment Picker. We'll also go down here and turn on Filter Duplicate Users off. That way, if anyone happened to have commented on Tuesday, March 9th's video, that will remove any duplicate entries. All right, so let's get to it. I have to answer this question because I'm not a bot. There we go. It shows that we have a total of 117 comments on the True Ghost Encounters video. Thank you all so much for being interactive with that video. All right, first out of the gate, we're going to start with the second place winner of a $50 e-gift card. I'll explain all of that as soon as we're done picking. Congratulations, the Cow Pie. You have won $50. Thank you so much for your support. All right, last but not least, here is the first place winner of the $100 giveaway. Congratulations to Cindy Hessen. Excuse me if I've pronounced anyone's name wrong, but Cindy, you are the winner of the $100 e-gift card. Now, the Cow Pie and Cindy Hessen, what I need you both to do is take a screenshot of your profile and email it over to phoenixfirenarrations@gmail.com. And once I see those, I will be in contact with you both. How you will receive your money is through an e-gift card. So, the Cow Pie, I'm going to email you a $50 e-gift card, and Cindy, I'm going to email you a $100 e-gift card. With all of that being said, thank you everyone who commented on the video, and congratulations to the Cow Pie and Cindy Hessen. And last but not least, if I have not heard from either of you in 3 days' time, I will redraw names for someone else. So make sure you get that email to me as soon as possible. With all of that being said, let's get you that dose of vocal melatonin that you crave so much. It is time to go back to ashes, for when we arise from the ashes, we are a bigger, better, and stronger person in the morning. Let's get started with this collection of horror. It was an average morning when it all started. I wish I hadn't looked into the mirror that day. It was strange. My reflection was different. My eyes were a bit off. My skin looked pale. And it looked like I was smiling, even though I wasn't. It was a scary experience. I was always creeped out by mirrors, but I thought maybe I was sick. Later in the day, I had a meeting with my friend, and I was curious if he could see those strange features on me. "Do I look pale?" I asked him. "Nope," he shook his head. "Absolutely not. Why?" "Just asking. I looked a bit ill in the morning." Maybe it was just the lighting that tricked me, I thought. I woke up the next day and I already forgot about it. As I looked into the mirror again, I almost jumped back. I looked even worse than the day before. My eyes became darker, like you could barely see I had pupils. I was paler than before. I looked like I had some kind of serious illness. I wanted to make sure, so I quickly went back to my room and took a selfie. To my surprise, I looked normal on the photo. I was confused. What the hell was going on? Maybe the mirror had some damage that caused this illusion, or maybe just the bathroom lights. I was thinking about doing some experiments with the mirror, but I was already late for work, so I just left it there. The following day, I woke up earlier than usual. I was shaking a little bit as I opened the bathroom door, afraid of what I will see in that damn mirror. As I slowly approached it, I could already see my reflection. My eyes were totally black, like in some kind of horror movie with the black-eyed children. My skin was white as fresh snow, and the most disturbing thing was the fact that my reflection was widely smiling, like some kind of maniac. I was shocked. I stood there for about a minute, but it felt like hours were passing by. I couldn't even breathe. I finally looked down and noticed my hands and legs were shaking. When I finally calmed down, I took a photo of the mirror. It looked the same in the picture too. Then I finally grabbed the mirror and took it outside, still naively hoping that the lights were tricking me. I hoped it was just some optical illusion, even though I didn't even believe it anymore. The reflection was the same. It was just like me, but much uglier and scarier, like some evil demon who tried to look like me. My brain tried to process what was happening, trying to find a logical explanation of the events, but it failed. I put that cursed thing back in the bathroom, then went to sleep. Or at least I tried to sleep. But I started to get really paranoid from what was happening. After hours of thinking, I finally fell asleep. I was lucky I didn't have to go to work the next day. When I woke up, I decided to avoid that bathroom at all costs as long as I could. I couldn't believe it when I pulled the curtains and I could see the same horrible reflection in my bedroom window. I screamed. But for some reason, I still stayed there, not moving an inch from where I was. I had absolutely no idea what to do. Who knows if that thing can follow me anywhere or not? I felt like I wasn't safe in my own room. Then, I finally decided what to do. I slammed the bathroom door open and picked up a steel hammer to break that effing mirror into pieces, hoping that it would stop the other me from appearing again. As I was ready to hit the mirror, however, I dropped the hammer to the ground from the shock. There was a mirrored sentence written on the glass. It was blood red. Considering the absurdity of the whole situation, maybe it was written with blood. Let me out. I ran out of the bathroom, then I ran out of the house, trying to catch my breath. I opened my phone and sent the picture of the reflection to my friend. I told him what happened. That's messed up, he texted back after a few minutes later. Maybe you should move out. That's unreal. I have no idea what to say. At first, I thought you were joking. We texted for another few minutes, then I went back to the house. I thought I was going crazy. The other me wrote the same sentence on every window, even on my TV. Let me out. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. I had to leave this house. I spent the rest of the day trying to figure out where to go. Meanwhile, avoiding looking at my windows, my parents lived in another city. I was thinking about asking my friend if I could stay in his home for a few days. But at that exact moment, he messaged me. "Please help. Since you sent me that picture, I see the same thing, and it's my reflection instead of yours. Whatever this is, you brought it to my house. Please try to find out how to stop this. I'm going crazy." I was terrified and felt guilty. It was my fault that this thing reached him too. Then I remembered what I wanted to do only a few hours before. I went back to the bathroom and picked up the hammer from the ground. I looked into the eyes of the other me, then hit the mirror with the hammer. It was gone. The other me was gone. I felt happy and relieved. I managed to do it. I checked out every window in my house and my reflection was normal. I defeated it. As I looked out the window, I froze. The thing was standing in my courtyard, and it wasn't a reflection anymore. It was the other me standing there, constantly changing its face, resembling hundreds of humans. I didn't defeat it. I let it out. I worked at a video store in the 90s and had a tape returned that wasn't one of ours. I had worked there for 2 years and loved it. There were all kinds of deals and discounts for employees, and we had a big popcorn machine, like you see in the movie theaters, free for anyone who wanted a bag. We had a large, repeat customer base of regulars that always looked for recommendations, which we were thrilled to give. 2 of us would close at the end of the night, with one typically being a guy. Yet, somehow on that Sunday, it ended up being 2 girls, and I was tired from a bad sleep the night before and not feeling great. So, I was just trying to get to the end of the shift. My coworker, Michelle's boyfriend, came by about an hour before close and went through the aisles repeatedly, trying to kill time. Finally, I told her she could take off and I'd close up myself. It was a Sunday, so we'd be closing at 8 p.m., which was a half hour away, and the store had been quiet all day, so I wasn't expecting some big rush. A few minutes after they left, I decided to start the cleanup early, which meant going around and collecting the garbage bags from all the bins around the store. The store itself was huge, with dozens of 5-foot rows of VHS tapes and large, load-bearing pillars decorated with prop characters. There were TVs playing new releases and all kinds of movie lore. As I walked out from behind the desk to start the garbage bins closest to the back door, I heard that familiar ding sound come from the front door opening. We had a late customer. I went back behind the desk and put another VHS in the automatic tape rewinder. Those things were great. As the tape rewound, I tried to get a better look at who had come in, but they turned down the first aisle, horror, and the shelves, and one of the large pillars was blocking my view. I waited for them to move out from behind the pillar, but they stayed there. Then, the tape popped up from the rewinder, and I let out an embarrassing gasp. I winced at myself and replaced the tape in its plastic sleeve. I set another tape to rewind and decided to start collecting the garbages near the front. When I got up to the horror aisle, the customer was gone. The store was quiet. I walked down the aisle and turned to the right, where I could see down 2 more rows. But there was no one. I went down another row and walked out to the main aisle leading to the desk and came face to face with the customer. He was a man in his mid-20s, about 6 feet tall. He had long jet black hair and was dressed in all black. He had a dirty leather jacket and wore chains with pentagrams and goat skulls. The Satanist look wasn't intimidating back then, as it kind of blended with the punk crowd in our area. I couldn't tell which side this guy was on, but there was something behind his eyes that made me feel cold. He stared at me, long and hard. It was the most uncomfortable I'd ever been. Neither of us spoke, and for a moment, I thought he was going to rush me. Then, the tape rewinder popped up and killed the tension. I let out a nervous laugh, and he smiled at me like he'd known me my whole life. Then he said, "Good night," and walked past me. I croaked out a, "You too," as I heard the front door open and close with that familiar jingle. I turned and saw the man outside, walking off towards a car at the far end of the parking lot. It was 7:45, but I decided to shut the store down early. The man left a lasting impression, and I called my boyfriend to be here right at 8 to pick me up. I locked the front door and immediately felt better. I packed up all the garbage and put them away. Then I went back to the front desk to empty the till when I saw something on the counter. It was a VHS tape in a plastic container. The man must have returned it, only it wasn't one of ours. It had the same kind of clear plastic holder we used, but didn't have a sleeve or jacket from our store. The tape inside of it had a sticker on it with a name written on it. Melissa. That was my name. The tape wasn't rewound. It was as far to the right as it could get, like it'd been watched to the very end. My hands were shaking, but I managed to put the tape in the rewinder. It was an automatic reaction. I wasn't even sure I wanted to watch the tape. As it rewound, I argued with myself over what to do. I thought about not watching it, but knew that would eat away at me. I thought about waiting for my boyfriend and watching it with him, but he was a hothead, and if there was something bad in the tape, I could see him going postal. I decided to watch it by myself in the back office of the store. My finger hovered over the play button, but eventually pressed it. The tape started with static. Then an image took over. It was a grainy handheld camera held by someone in the driver's seat of a car that was in motion. The holder of the camera was trying to keep it steady while they drove. After several seconds, the available hand turned the steering wheel, and I caught a glimpse of something out of the windshield that I recognized. It was the glowing sign above our store, South Coast Video in neon. I watched the car pull into the back end of the parking lot, right where the man had been going earlier. The camera pointed at the front entrance of the video store and waited. A familiar car entered the parking lot. My boyfriend's. It pulled up in front of the store, and I watched myself kiss my boyfriend and go in. The video cut to footage from a new day and another work drop-off, this time by my parents. It showed another and another, over a dozen cuts of me getting out of cars and going into the store. Then, the video showed me coming out, going into whichever car was picking me up that night and driving off. In the video, I recognized the pants I was wearing from the previous day and realized I was watching footage from last night. I watched myself get into my parents' car and we drove off. and this time, the camera followed. The driver was trailing us, and it stuck with us all the way home, watching my parents' car pull into our driveway. The camera focused on our house number, 42, then cut to black. For a moment, I thought that was it, but the tape had more. A new image flickered on. It said it was just after 3 a.m. It was from inside the car again, and it was pointed at my house. The driver's side door opened, and the camera got out. It moved across the street and towards the side of my home. The camera pointed in through windows alongside as it moved towards the backyard. I saw the living and dining room. Both were dark and empty. At the back door, there was fumbling and jangling before a small metal tool was brought out and jammed into the lock. It was twisted and popped the door open. My heart went from beating 1,000,000 miles per second to not at all. The man was inside my house. The camera switched to grainy night vision and moved through the empty kitchen. It entered the living room and looked at photos hanging on the wall and books stacked on shelves. It took the whole room in. Then it turned to the staircase, the one leading up to the bedrooms. The camera moved up the stairs quietly and reached the second floor. I pressed stop on the VCR. I wasn't sure I wanted to continue. I reconsidered getting my boyfriend and asking him to watch it and tell me what happened. But I had to know. I pressed play. The tape began with the camera looking left, then right down the hallway. I knew that to the right were my younger brother and sister's room, and to the left was the bathroom, my parents' room, and mine at the far end. The camera stared left, focused on the door at the end of the hallway. My door. The camera moved past the bathroom and my parents' room without slowing. It came to a stop outside my door. A hand reached out and turned the knob. It opened a crack, and the hand slid it open further, bringing the camera in. My bedroom door closed, with the man now inside. The camera found my bed, and there I was, sound asleep. My thumb hovered over the stop button on the VCR, ready to end whatever I was about to see before it traumatized me for life. The camera was placed on my desk facing the bed. The man from the store came into view. He carried a rag in his hand. I watched him creep up onto the bed, easing himself across it until he was over top of me. And then he pressed the rag down over my face. My body trembled and shook, then went still. I pressed stop and threw up in the garbage bin beside the TV. Watching the attack, I'd gotten a horrible, familiar feeling, like a forgotten memory reappearing after being lost. I took a few minutes to collect myself before deciding, once again, that whatever happened to me on that tape, I needed to know for myself. I pressed play again, and there was the image of my unconscious body in my bed being straddled by a black-clothed goth psychopath. The man pulled the rag away from my face. He pulled my shirt up over my head, then reached around to the back of his pants. He took out a knife with a ceremonial handle and dragged it down the center of my chest without drawing blood. Then he put the blade to the palm of his left hand and cut. He winced in the pain, and then resheathed his knife and dabbed his right finger in the blood from his palm. The man used the blood to draw all over my stomach and chest. He made strange markings on my skin, taking his time while he did. Then, the man finished and lit a candle. He held it with his right hand and put his bloody left hand on my stomach. I could hear him on the tape speaking quietly, but couldn't make out what the man was saying. It sounded like hushed chanting and prayer. As he went on, my back began to arch upwards and lift off the bed. My mouth opened, and I held one long, continuous gasp for what felt like minutes. Then, the man stopped, and so did my gasp. I fell limply back to the bed, and the candle blew out. After a moment, the man got up and cleaned the blood from my stomach using a towel he'd brought. He grabbed the camera from my desk and crept out of my room. Everything went hazy after that. I'd sweat through all my clothes and my whole body was trembling, but I still watched the camera sneak back out through my house and to his car. The video pulled something back into my memory, a strange, frightening disturbance in that night. Only brief flashes in length and dismissed as a bad dream. But I had a horrible migraine when I woke up. It all made sense. I showed the video to my boyfriend and he freaked out. We called the police and gave them every bit of evidence there was, but the man was never found. That was years ago, and the only reason I'm thinking about it now is because I'm pregnant, and there are strange markings appearing on my growing belly that look a lot like the ones the man had drawn in his own blood on my stomach. Look outside your window. July 5th, 1996. Hello, my name is Jeremy. I'm 24 years old. I'm currently living in a psychiatric hospital. I'm being kept here because my doctor says this place will help me with my conditions. I've been diagnosed with bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, as well as anxiety. I've had these since I was just a kid, and they greatly affect me as a person. I'm hoping this place can help me. My doctor recommends that I write down my thoughts and feelings in my journal daily, so I can monitor how I feel as time progresses. I will try to update this soon. I'm going to take my medicine. July 10th, 1996. Okay, update. I've been trying to keep a consistent diet. I've been eating the same meal each day to keep my brain regulated and healthy. I've also been drinking water a lot more often. My nurse says I should exercise more by going for walks around the courtyard. She says it will keep my brain active and engaged. She also says it's better than being locked inside my room all day, bored with nothing to do. I agree with her, but I don't like being in the courtyard. I can sense everybody silently judging me. I just know they are. July 15th, 1996. I entered the courtyard for the first time today. I took a couple laps around the entire perimeter. I was nervous and hesitant at first, but it wasn't so bad. A couple people stopped to say hello to me. They didn't mean any harm. The cool wind kept blowing my long hair in my face. I think I will go for more walks out there in the future, especially when the weather is nice. I have been hearing a strange tapping sound coming from the window in my cell. It usually happens when I'm trying to sleep. I haven't looked outside the window before. I don't know what is on the other side or what is causing the tapping. I'll find out for myself soon enough. For now, I'm going to get some rest. July 20th, 1996. I had difficulty sleeping last night. The tapping continued, louder this time. I still haven't looked out, and I still don't know what lies on the other side. My best guess is the courtyard. Maybe a hallway? I don't know. I'm afraid to look out. I'm scared. I'll write down a brief description of my room. I have a small bed in the corner. It's actually more like a cot. It smells weird and it's stained. The floor is made of concrete. So are the walls. The room is dim, almost dark. There is a toilet and a sink in the opposite corner to my resting area. The window is next to the sink. There is also a shelf with some activities like board games and cards to keep me occupied. I keep my journal and ink pen with me at all times. July 25th, 1996. I finally decide to see what was in the window after enough annoying tapping. The answer shocked me. The window leads to another cell, which looks pretty much identical to mine. However, there was someone else in that cell, and whenever I peek my head around to look out the window, I can see them staring back at me. This is an invasion of my privacy. I can't stand being observed constantly like this. How long has this pervert been watching me for? The face they make, I can tell that they don't like me. I can tell they want to hurt me and do terrible things to me. The last thing I want to do right now is sleep. July 26th, 1996. Here's another update. I didn't sleep at all last night. I stayed up, hunched in the corner of my room. Whenever I got up to pee occasionally, I swear I could see that ugly man staring at me from the window out of the corner of my eye. Sometimes I can hear him whispering to me. I feel disgusted. I'm so exhausted. I think I'm going to be sick. July 30th, 1996. I avoided the window entirely today. I can't possibly fathom looking in there and seeing the man again. I spent most of today in the courtyard. I asked a young girl if she had a window in her cell that led directly to the cell next to her. She told me no. I managed to take a nice nap on a hill near some gym equipment. I woke up feeling great and refreshed. It was the first time I've gotten decent sleep in days, even maybe weeks. Probably because that creep wasn't staring at me. August 5th, 1996. I decided to take my mind off of the window by playing some of the games that were sitting on the shelf. Dust and cobwebs covered them, so I figured I might as well give them a shot, since they haven't been touched by anyone in months. I played Chutes and Ladders and poker by myself. I actually found it to be quite enjoyable. It was the first time I had fun in weeks. August 10th, 1996. Today, I heard laughter coming from the window. Noises from a deranged lunatic. The sounds of someone who has nothing better to do than bother and torment me. Why can't he just leave me alone? I can't do this anymore. I'm crying at the thought of approaching the window again. I can't keep hiding from him, though. I have to talk to him. I must confront the man in the window, eventually. August 15th, 1996. It was my birthday a couple days ago. I celebrated by eating a slice of lemon cake, my favorite dessert. I spent the rest of the day in the courtyard. I treated myself to another well-deserved nap out there. I enjoy the warm sun. I whistled happy birthday to myself in my room, but I can't help but feel like somebody else was singing it with me. It even wasn't comforting. It was unnerving. August 20th, 1996. I spoke to the dreaded man in the window for the first time ever today. It went about as well as I expected. Horribly. He looked violent. His eyes were red, and his hair was long, thick, and greasy. He probably hadn't taken a shower in weeks. Everything I said to him, he repeated back to me. It's like he's mocking me. I tried asking him why he watches me constantly. I had to reason with him. Is he just bored? Is it some kind of weird fetish? Honestly, I've had enough of this guy. I'm going to speak to my nurse and have him removed and put in a different room. I should have thought of this earlier, but I just want him gone. August 25th, 1996. I just spoke to my nurse. I told her there's this man who stares at me through the window in my room, and I asked her if she could have him removed. She seemed confused, and she told me that I didn't have a window in my room. I insisted that I did. We argued for 10 minutes. I finally brought her into my room and showed her the window. She scoffed. Before leaving, she told me one thing. That's not a window, Jeremy. That's a mirror. The man you fear is your own reflection. August 30th, 1996. The tapping never stops. Please make it stop. Make it stop. The voices never stop. Make it stop. Please make it stop. He never stops looking at me. Make it stop. Make it stop. Make it stop. Please. I'd followed her back to the apartment, making sure to keep my distance. Then I waited, just long enough, and moved quietly around to the back. I knew where the accessible rooms were. This wasn't my first visit. I cracked the window, slid it up slowly, carefully, and pulled myself up over the sill. I could see the woman laying on the bed. Let me back up a little. I've been doing this for a while now. I started later in life when I was in my 40s. I'm well over 50 now. It does wear on me, to be honest. I'm still very fit, but not as agile as I used to be. Being older is a bit of a superpower, though. I am noticed a lot less and can follow my targets much more easily. I do remember my first. They say you never forget that one, don't they? It was almost accidental. I had no plans to do anything. I'm not that kind of person. At least I thought I wasn't. But an opportunity presented itself and, well, I took it. It was in a bar. And I noticed a woman who I thought was drunk, but thinking back, she'd only had one drink. And when she'd come in, she acted normally. When she left, moments later, she could barely walk. I followed her. Don't ask me why. I just felt a compulsion. By the way, did you know that Sawzall thing is incredibly versatile? It cuts through bone like butter. Okay, maybe like butter with a bone in it. But still, it truly is amazing. Not that I enjoy that part of things, but one has to be tidy if one wants to avoid the long arm of the law. I'd stalked this one for a couple of weeks, learned patterns, scoped out the house, just waiting for the perfect situation. Now it was time. I slunk into the bedroom, keeping to the shadows as much as possible, although I was fairly sure she heard me. Her head was moving back and forth, trying to pinpoint whatever sound I'd made. I smiled to myself. Then The bedroom door opened and a man came in. The woman now looked terrified as I snuck up on silent feet behind the man and slid my stiletto blade in between his ribs. He hardly made a sound as he crumpled lifeless to the floor. It didn't take long to cut the woman free. She wasn't his first. I explained to her his history of assaults and attacks while we cleaned up. The neighbors wouldn't notice his absence for a long time, as he was often away traveling. I made her promise that she wouldn't report this, but in any case, who would believe that a respectable older woman, like myself, had broken in and killed her attacker and then spirited the body away? In 2017, I was an undergrad, living with 3 other students in a rough student house in a big city. For context on the layout of the house, this will be beneficial for the story. My bedroom was the only one on the ground floor, beside the front door and opposite the kitchen. We only had a front door and front windows, no back door. My bed was in the middle of the room. The bottom of the bed was facing the bedroom door. There were 3 floors in total, 2 bedrooms on the second floor, and another bedroom and sitting room on the 3rd floor. One June evening, we all decided to head out, with a few other friends who came around for pre-drinks, for a big drunken night out in town to simultaneously celebrate the end of exams. It was my 21st birthday, and one big last hurrah before everyone went back home or went traveling for the summer. I'm not a huge clubber, so me and my then boyfriend were ready to go home at around 1:30. We hitched an Uber back, drunkenly got a takeaway, and passed out in bed around 2 to 2:30 a.m. At 4:30 a.m., we were both jolted awake by one of my housemates slamming open the door with, "We've been robbed." We rubbed our eyes in bewilderment, as neither of us had woken up, and thought she was playing some horrible prank. Surely, given our proximity to the front door, we would have heard something. We walked up the stairs to discover the upstairs rooms were largely ransacked and items missing. Everyone's electronics that weren't on them were gone, like laptops, iPads, cameras. Passports were gone, and my housemate's weed stash was taken. A baseball cap from the girl whose room was on the 3rd floor was found in another person's bedroom on the 2nd floor, meaning the intruder wore the cap and took it off as he or they proceeded through the house. It then hit me. What about my room? I raced downstairs to check my belongings and discovered that my handbag at the bottom of the bed was missing, and my ex's phone and wallet that were also at the bottom of the bed was taken. My laptop was on the bedside table beside me and was untouched. The intruder, or intruders, managed to break open the front door, go through the entire house, ransack rooms looking for things to steal, and actually open the door of the bedroom we were sleeping in to take things right in front of the bed we were sleeping in, and we never woke up to any of it. To say I was shook when I found out what happened was an absolute understatement. The police came to take our statements and file a report, but nothing ever came of it. To this day, I'm still super uneasy to go to bed in an empty house after that night. I am forever grateful that we never woke up in the middle of the robbery, or that I went home alone that night, because the outcome could have been very, very different. My dad and I were camping for the weekend because it was the perfect weather for camping. So we headed out to a forest we knew was very nice. It had a beautiful river and good spots to camp in. Plus, we were the only people who ever camped in these woods. As expected, we set up our campsite and all the stuff you would normally do when you go camping. And then we went to bed. I woke up at around 1 a.m. to go to the bathroom. My father was asleep still, so after finishing up my business, I came back to my campsite and checked on my father. I opened the tent up and, to my surprise, he wasn't there. So I thought maybe he went to the bathroom as well. But when I went to the bathroom, he looked like he was still in a deep sleep. There's no way he would go to the bathroom at the same time I would, randomly, or maybe he did. I brushed it off and went back inside the tent, back to bed, and then I woke up in the morning and checked on my dad. And before I could check his tent, I heard someone whisper, "That's not me." Then I looked behind me, and my father was behind a tree looking pale. I ran over to him, and then he said, "We gotta get out of here." "Why?" I said. "I'll tell you when we get in the car." So we packed our stuff and we left our tents because someone was in there. Then my dad would explain what had happened. "So I had to leave you alone for a bit because I was going to the store to get some more supplies we missed. I know I felt terrible for leaving you alone, and when I came back I saw someone enter my tent. So I stayed up all night behind a tree to make sure that person didn't try to hurt you." "Wait, so that person sleeping wasn't you?" The realization struck me so hard, I became paranoid as hell after hearing that. "So I waited all night to tell you so we could get out of the woods before they noticed." After that, we never went camping there ever again. Coma. Crap, that hurts. Why is my head throbbing like this? Wait, where am I? Why is it so dark? And shit, I can't move my arms. I can't move my arms. How about my legs? No? One toe? One finger? Crap. Okay, breathe. Relax. Just open your eyes and we'll figure this out. Open your eyes. Shit. No arms. No legs. No eyes. Help. Somebody help me. Can't talk either. Jesus. All right, what can I do? I can hear. Yes, I can hear. Beeping. Is that a heart rate monitor? Slow, rhythmic pulsing. Yeah, I think that's a heart rate monitor. And I can smell too. Chemicals or cleaning supplies maybe. A hospital. I'm in the hospital. It smells exactly like it did all those times Mom visited me. Shit. Okay. Why am I here? I don't remember. Think. What's the last memory I have? The weather was beautiful. First day of the year. It was going to hit 70. I decided to take the motorcycle to work. I'm cresting a hill when I see a pickup. It's passing a car and coming straight at me. There's no time to stop. That's it. I must have slammed head on into the truck. Explains why my head hurts so badly. But why can't I move anything? Why can't I feel anything below my neck? What's that? Is that a door? Someone's coming. Or two someones, maybe. They're talking. Miracle this guy is still alive. Unbelievable. Yeah. Flipped head first over a truck at 60 miles per hour and slammed across the pavement for 50 yards. Broke both femurs, his pelvis, bones in both arms, clavicle. Actually, the list of things he didn't break is shorter. Holy shit.
Maybe it's better that I can't feel anything right now.
Right? Only thing he's still breathing is he had a helmet on. But look at the x-rays of his neck.
Why? What's wrong with my neck?
Oh, yikes. Odds he ever feels anything below his chin again are slim to none.
Oh my God. No. I can't be paralyzed.
Yep, I thought the same thing. Shame. Look at his heart function, though. Actually looks perfect. Doesn't Dr. Wilson have a patient that needs a new one? Yeah, and they're loaded. Wilson said he'd give 20% off what they're paying him to grease the wheels to whoever finds him one.
Wait, what? No, I'm still alive. Hey, I'm still alive.
Let's see. Oh, look, he's an organ donor.
Whoa. I just checked a box at the BMV. I'm still breathing. I need my heart. Listen to the monitor. It's still beating in my chest.
Serendipitous, isn't it? I'd say so. Probably brain dead anyway.
I'm not brain dead. I can hear you. Oh God, please open your eyes. Open your eyes.
Be a tragedy to let a good heart beat away in an empty shell, don't you think?
Agreed.
Split it 50-50.
No, please, no, I'm still in here. Don't do this, I'm begging you. Please, just let my eyes open.
Oh shit, he's awake.
Yes, I see you. Wait, what are you putting in my IV?
Not for long, though.
No, don't push that plunger. The beeping is slowing. I'm so very tired.
All right, listeners. These next two stories are a part 1 and a part 2, entitled, I Found a Cardboard Box Filled with Old 8mm Tapes in My Parents' Garage. I'm beginning to think the footage on them wasn't staged. Part 1. I recently acquired a box full of high 8 tapes. The story of how this damp cardboard stuffed with cheap black plastic ended up in my garage might warrant its own post, which I'll get to eventually. For now, I'll cover the basics. These are something like 60s tapes, all the same, high 8 format that was popular with consumer camcorders in the 80s and 90s. Only a few of the tapes have any discernible labels. For example, one has a peeling white sticker along its side that reads, Halloween with the Neighbors. Another has a half-ripped label that reads in part, On the Piano. However, the vast majority lack identifying features or provide any indication of what is on the tape, and some appear to be just entirely empty. Naturally, my curiosity demanded that I watch each one, so I set out on the somewhat exhausting task of locating vintage electronics such that I could actually view and eventually digitize them. After a deep dive through AV forums and a stop at the Jonesboro flea market, I was up and running. Here is the description of the first tape with some commentary on its peculiarities. Tape 1, The Department Store. This was clearly made on a handheld camera. It opens with a shaky shot. The director quickly panning from his shoes up to the peeling beige exterior of a closed department store. It's night and the man filming is walking towards the store. In front of him, Another man, dressed in a black hoodie and jeans, looks back. "Hey Frank, keeping up?"
"I'm coming, Ted. You're not the only one with the camera. I'm trying to keep it steady."
Frank pans upwards, showing the faded shadow of a former store sign. The discoloration above the entrance spelt out, "Willman's." Now, this is interesting. Willman's was a chain local to the Jonesboro region. There were half a dozen or so stores spread out among the Tri-County area. It's the type of store your mom would take you to for back-to-school shopping. Which is to say, it was devoid of any personality and horrendously boring. Its endless aisles strewn with functional clothing, jewelry, and kitchenware that is only memorable insofar that it was also forgettable. Unfortunately, I couldn't tell from the recording which of the Willman stores Ted and Frank were visiting, but I at least know this was a tape produced locally. It's also obvious that the store was already long abandoned. Willman's declared bankruptcy in the early 90s and closed all of its stores before the turn of the century. When Ted catches up to his friend Frank, he's already prying open one of the sliding doors. The camera zooms in on his fingers, wrapping around the door's metal frame. "See? I told you it wasn't locked. All we have to do is force it open and slip in." Ted seems to be tittering with excitement.
"You think there's actually still stuff in there? It won't be that interesting if it's totally stripped."
The doors begin to slide apart as Frank answers. "Totally. One of my friends worked here when it closed. She told me that it was totally, well, there wasn't money to move the inventory and no one wanted it." Frank stumbles backwards, surprised by the sudden give as the door snaps open. "Oh shit," he says. At this point, Ted switches the camera into night vision mode. Frank has a flashlight, which he turns on as they step into the vast store.
"Holy shit,"
Ted whispers, his breathing heavy behind the camera.
"It looks like everything was left behind."
He pans the camera around the threshold of the store, focusing for a moment on the jewelry counter, which still sparkles with sterling silver and plated white gold. Then he swings to the left, following the off-white walkway as it veers into the men's business casual section. To the right, the cracked linoleum leads into the much larger women's section. They began to slowly investigate the store, their slow, quiet footsteps echoing softly against the grime-covered tiles. There are leaflets and other detritus strewn about the aisles. A close look at one indicates advertising for a Black Friday sale, leading me to believe the shop closed during the holiday season. Whoa! Ted's awe-inspiring exhaustions make up much of the rest of the noise during the few minutes of relative calm. Frank is the more jittery of the two, jogging well past Ted to cycle through racks of clothing or stare at the empty metal shelving where small appliances once were. It's also Frank who notices something odd about a grouping of mannequins in the women's wear-to-work section. Someone stripped the mannequins, huh? He thumbs over his shoulder, directing Ted's, and the camera's, attention to a display of 3 peach-colored statues. Their slender limbs are still posed carefully, arms akimbo or one hand raised as if gesturing during a presentation, but they're entirely nude. Ted shuffles up close, zooming in with his camera to verify that the mannequins do not, in fact, have genitals. And though they have the humps of breasts, they lack nipples. Not very detailed, he observes, before shifting the lens to one's face. Its eyes have the black outline of mascara, its mouth the red luminance of lipstick, and the only pops of color on it were, disturbingly, on an empty face. You know, I don't think you're supposed to pay this much attention to mannequins, They're meant to be background noise, right? Like paintings in a dentist office. If you get up close and really check them out, they start to look pretty freaking creepy. Frank is pacing circles around the trio of former models until Ted comes in for a close-up. His camera picks up something curious about the mannequins. There are no seams. Normally, a mannequin would have distinct lines in its body where the various limbs attach. But these appear to be singular objects. It's not clear if Ted notices this, but his camera closely inspects the filthy arms and legs. Why are they, naked? His voice is somewhat shaky. They went to the trouble of undressing them, but not removing them? Who knows? Frank is shrugging, already walking away towards the particularly chaotic-looking holiday section. Why is any of this stuff here? It just is. People were here, then gone. The next few minutes are a bit of a mess. I imagine it's due to the age of the magnetic tape, which appears to be seriously degraded. This makes my task to digitize this material that much more important. What I'm able to see, though, are some sudden cuts forward in a haze of static. The two men are investigating the holiday aisles, where they find a motley assortment of unloved ornaments and crushed tinsel. Eventually, the tape settles down and there's a sound behind Ted. He whips around and we get a stark view of the long aisle. He's flanked by two tall sets of shelves, mostly empty, save for a few decorative throw pillows. At the end of the aisle, nearly swallowed by the dark, is the outline of a mannequin. Only its leg is visible, the rest of its body off to the side behind the end cap. What the hell? Frank, do you see? But Frank's gone. There's another noise, a skittering like beads rolling across tile. Ted's breathing is very loud. There's an edge to it too, as though he knows something terrible is about to unfold. Slowly, the camera shifts from where Frank should have been, at the east end of the aisle, back to the west. The mannequin is mere inches from Ted now, its arms outstretched, but frozen. He screams, runs, falls down, but quickly gets back up. The camera is so shaky that it's hard to discern what happens next, but I can hear a deep, bassy noise, almost like a growl. There's a cut, and then the camera shakes, showing a close-up of Teddy's dirty jeans. Why he is still filming at this point, I can't say. Perhaps it's the disconnection obtainable by viewing the world through a lens. He is both there and not. An active and passive participant. Perhaps it's that he finds some comfort in having something literally holding his hand. These old camcorders had a strap so that you could wrap your hand around their bulky plastic shell. Or it could be the adrenaline that has his brain laser focused on the current predicament, such that he's barely even aware that he's still filming. Maybe it's all of these things. Regardless, there he is filming from the side of a dress rack. I can see the dated floral pattern still swaying gently from his entrance between them. There's the sound of plastic dragging along linoleum somewhere in the distance. Eventually, Ted's breathing slows. He starts to lean forward, no doubt planning to push apart the dresses and peek out. But as he reaches for the hem of a scarlet dress, it moves. The fabric snaps back and the piercing white fingers of a mannequin push inside his hiding place. The camera falls. I can't see the object or creature that the arm is attached to. All I can see is the fabric of Ted's jeans getting pulled across the frame. He shouts and screams as the camera keeps recording. I can hear a scuffle as he's clearly dragged through the store.
Help! Help! Help!
His voice fades out and the screen goes blue. I don't know what to make of this tape. It's very disturbing. It seems almost real, but that can't be the case, right? Surely it's some lost amateur film project. I'll need to ask my parents whether they know Ted or Frank when they speak to them next. Until then, I'm going to keep looking through these tapes to see if there's anything else interesting. I'll let you know if I find more. Part 2. I took a break from looking through the tapes. For some reason, I felt slightly disturbed by the first tape I wrote about. I'm not usually easily scared, but admittedly, I had a few nightmares after viewing the department store video. I mean, I watched tons of scary movies, so it really shouldn't be an issue. But I think it was the combination of grainy quality mixed with how genuinely terrified Ted and Frank appeared. I know. Obviously, it's fake. It has to be. Still, it hit me hard. I'm even reluctant to digitize the tape, like it's almost too spooky to share. Anyway, today I had some free time after work, so I set up in my living room and got back to digging through these tapes. It's been somewhat laborious because a lot of them are empty or only have a few minutes or even seconds of footage, but I have to scrub through the entire length, 120 freaking minutes, to make sure I'm not missing anything. It takes forever. Some of the tapes are entirely empty. Others have footage, but it doesn't show up until halfway through the tape. What kind of psychopath would start recording in the middle of a tape? It's absurd. That's the case with the tape I'm sharing today, which I've labeled. This one is shorter than the first, but no less puzzling. And well, it seems clear to me there's some kind of connection between the two. Here is that tape. Tape 2, the bird with the hand. The first 22 minutes are blank, just a blue screen with a timestamp. In this case, it reads January 4th, 1995. Suddenly, the screen goes black and then white. There's the distinctive click of a lens cap coming off and then the crunch of snow. The camera is aimed towards someone's boot-clad feet, trudging along a sidewalk among dead oak trees. It's an overcast day and the person behind the camera is breathing heavily. It must be very cold. The landscape reminds me of the Midwest, leading me to believe this tape was filmed in the same region as the first. How do I know that? Call it a hunch, but Midwesterners can sort of spot their own people in places. The only indication I see in the entire tape of an actual location is a brief clip of a street sign, Honey Hollow Lane. More on that location later. The faded green of that sign is in the first few minutes of actual footage, before the person filming veers off a residential road and down a snow-covered gravel path. Eventually, this path seems to disappear. The person's a woman, I think, breathing growing more belabored as they break through fresh, deep powder. Aside from the constant hiss endemic to this sort of old tape, there's an eerie stillness. All you can hear is that steady, deep breathing and the crunching of snow. Finally, after what feels like an eternity, the videographer finally speaks. Freaking unreal. I knew Ted was full of crap. There's freaking nothing out here. That freaking prick. Her voice is one of clear irritation, and at one point, she sweeps the camera back in the direction she came from. Her long line of slightly crooked footprints are visible in the deep snow. She seems to be contemplating turning back. Freak it. Fine. I'll give it a little longer. There better be something here. twig snapped beneath her heel. She moves her hands into frame to push away thin black branches. I can almost hear the frustration in her movements as she pushed deeper into the dense forest. But then there's a gasp. Whoa! Holy crap! The camera pans upwards and she steps into a circular clearing. It's all fresh snow with no signs of human or animal tracks. This makes it all the more strange that a few feet away from our nameless videographer is what appears to be a tape. Interestingly, it's not covered in snow. It appears to have been very gently laid in its plastic case in the dead center of the small glade. "That's really freaking weird," she mutters. "It wasn't supposed to be a tape." Wait, what was it supposed to be? Clearly there's a lot of context missing here. She steps forward, intent on retrieving the tape. But just as soon as she bends down, there's a sound. A high-pitched caw-caw, the first evidence of another living thing in the woods. Huh? She moves the camera upwards, scanning the tree line for her avian stalker. The bird, a crow, I think comes into view, but the camera is out of focus. She zooms in with the primitive camera slowly autofocusing as she does. What the hell is that? The crow is holding something in its talons. She takes a few steps forward. Is that a freaking hand? But it's a pale porcelain white, a mannequin's hand. She screams, "What the hell?" But she's not referring to the crow. The next few seconds of the video are an absolute blur, but I slowed them down, advancing frame by frame so that I could see what happened. She swoops the camera's focus down towards her ankle. Something is grabbing her. Another hand? It's so white. It nearly blends into the snow. There's the sound of a struggle. "Get the F off of me!" She kicks and falls forward, lodging the camera into the snow a few feet from her head. I can only see it for a split second, and there's an entire circle of hands around the tape. They're vibrating, twisting, shaking the snow that surrounds them. Then, there's a high-pitched wailing from somewhere in the distance. I hear scratches. The woman? I can see her in the corner of the frame, moving desperately, face down, clawing into the densely packed powder. Whatever it is keeps getting closer. The wailing growing louder and louder and louder and... smash! The lens cracks, but through the splintered glass I can still see it. I can see her getting dragged away. Her hands leave desperate trails. White noise. The tape ends. It's clear there are some similarities with the first tape, which leads me to believe they might be pieces of some weird amateur horror film. Maybe even a school project. Mannequins, or parts of them at least, are featured in both tapes. And the name Ted is mentioned by the videographer of the second tape. While that's a very common name, it's also the name of one of the urban explorers from the first tape. Admittedly, even though I think this must be some silly unfinished film, I can't help but feel obscenely curious. First, there's the question of why my parents had these tapes. I imagine they would have been much too old to have a hand in their production during the 90s. Perhaps I'll need to speak with them about it again. The last time I tried, they were oddly circumspect, refusing to elaborate on how this box of tape ended up in their home. But, and here's the really exciting thing, I think I figured out where Honey Hollow Lane is. I scoured Google Maps, searching out every occurrence of that street name with a particular focus on the Midwest. Using the Street View function, I found a strip of broken asphalt that looks quite similar to the brief view I get in the tape. It's located in a small town called Bishop Hill, which is only a few hours away from me. What do you think? Should I make the trip there? I think I could retrace our unnamed videographer's steps and, well, if that tape was still in that clearing, can you imagine? That could mean there's something more going on here than just a homemade movie. I sit here today, 24 years of age. I think I'm 24. Lights flash every day. I wake up from puking every day next to some dumpster. I don't remember how I got there. The parasite probably took me there. Oh, it's an evil thing. I'm a monster, it says. Oh, I'm a monster. The parasite ruins everything. It does. Angeline. I love Angeline. I don't know Angeline anymore. She didn't like the parasite. The parasite eats its cure. I loved Angeline. I promise I did. A quick jab and I'm all ready again for just a few moments. I grew up in suburban areas. I was on the soccer team. I'm really good at soccer. I was recruited. My parents were so proud. I missed their pride. At a time I needed it like the parasite needed its cure, but the parasite's cure, the same cure that birthed it, made me feel like I needed none of their pride. Daddy issues, mommy issues, parasitic issues. We were really well off. I shouldn't be this way. I had nothing to worry about. I loved you, Angeline. I got a scholarship. Why did I end up this way? Mommy doesn't understand. I think she understands. I never lacked affection from Daddy, quite the contrary. But when we were alone, why did he do those things? That wasn't what daddies do. Marcus offered it to me. We were kids having fun. I didn't know any better. He introduced it as the thing that killed his dad. I wanted to kill my dad. Mommy coated my food in lemon juice because she knew. I loved Angeline. My life was perfect. Everyone knew so. They told me so. Mommy was the one who kicked me out. That wasn't nice. Angeline might have been the only other person who knew. She knew. She comforted me. My parasite was injected. I hate Marcus for it. I started talking to my parasite too much. They didn't care until me and the parasite talked too much. I woke up and I don't remember anything. Why can't I remember? Oh, Angeline. She cared for me, but she didn't like the little needles. We were in my car when she first found them. She was mad. I said I'd kill the parasite and I tried. I fought so hard. I couldn't. She left. That was the second house I wasn't allowed in. I liked that house. I got to shower alone. I'm feeling tired. I hope everyone's all right. I can't play soccer anymore. The parasite broke a window and stole money from another student. He's an evil thing. The needles were why Mommy kicked me out. The shriek was loud, too loud. I wasn't ready. I was never allowed back. No son of hers. No son of hers? Maybe she was protecting me. Maybe she saw me as a lover she couldn't compete with. The lemon juice haunts me now. I don't like lemon juice. Angeline left and never came back. The parasite went through her window one night. Her daddy shot me. I ran. I'm here now, decaying. The parasite may not kill me, but I still think it did. The worst part is before I die, all I want is to speak with that parasite one more time.
They're coming in through the vents.
Grandpa, it's your heart medication. No one is coming in through the vents. It was 2007, and my grandfather was slowly dying. His body had been on the fritz for a while, and now his mind was starting to slip. My grandma had passed away 2 years earlier from a stroke. I think my grandpa had just wanted to give up, but I wouldn't let him. My grandparents were part of the greatest generation, and they lived up to that. To this day, they're still the best people I know.
It's Al-Qaeda.
Grandpa, Al-Qaeda is not climbing into your attic vents. My little brother had joined the Marines just before 9/11, and he found his end over in Iraq 2005. My grandfather never got over his death. If my brother had still been around in 2007, maybe I would have had a little help with my grandpa. Maybe things would have been different.
I know it sounds crazy, but I hear them up there every once in a while. Can you please just take a look?
I remember looking at my watch. I was going to be late for one of my classes if I didn't nip the issue in the bud right then and there. Okay, I will check. He smiled, and I grabbed a little stepladder from his garage. I popped the heavy access panel up. For some reason, my father decided to enforce the panel with a length of 2x4 on each side. Nothing my dad did made sense, and my mother was the exact same way. I shined a flashlight around the tight space of the attic. My grandparents' house was pretty large, so I couldn't see every nook and cranny of the attic. I had no ambition to crawl along rafters and insulation to confirm that it was empty.
You see anybody up there, Jay?
Nothing, Grandpa. Just rafters, cobwebs, and insulation. You're all good. I made it to class on time, but I had to ask to borrow notes from someone afterwards because all I could think about was my grandpa. My parents lived only a few miles from my grandpa, but they hardly ever went by to check on him. They were wanting him to go ahead and get things over with as well. They couldn't wait to sell the house. I checked on him every day just after work and right before class, and on the weekends, I would see him just before my night job. I was in the process of rebuilding a life that I had ruined on my own. I was living out of my car. I would have moved in with him and been around a little bit more, but my parents refused. We didn't get along very well.
Hey, Jay, I'm still a little worried about those vents.
It was a couple of weeks after he had first asked me about checking his attic. His face was a little more haggard than usual, but he was old. Did you see something? My question made his eyes dart over to the back window. He shook his head, but I knew it was the new medication they had him on. The hallucinations were happening far more often. I asked my mother on the phone if there was an alternative. That went nowhere. Grandpa, what did you see? You can tell me.
They creep around the yard at night. Can you please just get up on the ladder and make sure the vents are secure? Put some big screws in them.
Okay, Grandpa. I walked around the house. He had 3 metal vents under 3 gables. From the ground, they looked just fine, and I expected nothing less. But I would need to get a ladder. I walked into his garage and found this old aluminum extension ladder. It was buried behind a tremendous amount of dusty junk covered in cobwebs. It was no longer my grandfather's garage. When he was able-bodied, my grandfather was a regular Hank Hill, and everything was neatly organized. This was now my parents' dusty 2-car storage bin, where they would throw odd bits of crap they found at estate sales. I looked at my watch. I had a test that night. I knew I didn't have time, and I told myself that I would come over a little earlier on Saturday so I could do what he wanted. I walked back inside. "Hey, Grandpa, it's all good." He was in his recliner watching The Shootist. He was watching that one every week now.
"Okay, are you going to class?"
"Yes, I'll be back tomorrow. Call me if you need anything."
"I love you."
"I love you too, Grandpa." As the weeks went on, I noticed that he was declining. He was seeing things more often, and he was having trouble remembering things. I'd been doing his dishes every time I was over, and I would handle the trash because he kept forgetting. But when he stopped showering is when I got really worried. His eyes were also drawn. He wasn't sleeping.
"I thought you screwed the vents in."
"I did, weeks ago."
"Well, I heard them up there again. Sometimes they'll yell all day. They're angry up there. They're coming in to get me."
"Grandpa, I'm here every day. I never hear anything."
"That's because they know you're here. They're quiet."
"Grandpa, it's your heart medication. You need to start taking showers too, Grandpa. The house stinks really bad."
"I can't. They'll get me in the shower. Can you just check the vents again?"
"I'll check them." I didn't check them. I did something infinitely harder. I called my mother. "Mom, he's not doing good." "Jay, he's old. People start to lose it towards the end." "Look, I'm just going to ask again. If you guys would just let me stay with him." "Absolutely not." My mother had me on speaker, and my father had to chime in. His voice was distant. It seemed poetic to me. "The last thing John needs is some freeloader staying in his house. He can get his own damn house. Living in a damn car." "Honey." I could hear my mother shushing my father and a muffled protest coming from him right afterward. "You don't have to go over there every day. Your grandfather is perfectly capable of taking care of himself." "But he's not, Mom. Come on, he's your dad." "Who do you think you are when it comes to my relationship with my father?" I could hear my dad in the background telling her to hang up the phone. After a couple more remarks, that's exactly what she did. "I'm sorry, but we can't risk decreasing the dosage. This is what his heart needs. Unfortunately, he's one of those rare people that have a reaction to it." His doctor was a cold, balding man. I took a shot. "Doctor, he's not doing good. I need your help." "Son, to be honest, I shouldn't even be talking with you as much as I have. This is your mother's father. She's the one responsible for him. I can't legally do anything unless you think some abuse is going on." "Okay." "You yourself can always reach out to Adult Protective Services if you think there's abuse going on." "Then they just throw him in a home, huh?" "That's a possibility, yes." "I could never do that to him." "Son, talk to your mother. Share your concerns with her. She's a very nice woman, and she cares about her father very, very much." As the weeks went by, his house started smelling worse, and his face was hanging lower and lower. I was trying my best.
"Son, I know I'm old. I know I'm losing it upstairs. But I want you to be honest with me. Did you ever put those screws in those vents for me?"
"Yeah?" I was fixing him something to eat that didn't come out of a box. I had started cooking for him every night. He was at least going to have real food.
"I think you're fibbing.
Here, eat while it's hot, Grandpa.
You're not answering me.
I know that, Grandpa. Before I leave, I'm going to run up the ladder and I'll check all of them again. I want you to trust me.
Can you check the access panel too?
I cleaned up his kitchen and grabbed the stepladder. I hadn't been down the hallway towards the rest of the house for at least 2 weeks. I noticed that there were chunks of sheetrock on the carpet, and when I looked up, I saw quite a few holes in the ceiling. I walked through every room in the back of the house, and every room had holes poked through them. Grandpa? I dropped the stepladder in one of the spare bedrooms and walked back toward the living room. Where did all the holes in the ceiling come from?
I'm telling you, they're up there. I used the broomstick to try and shut them up. Poke them real good.
Grandpa, you can't poke holes in your ceilings. He got up from his recliner and took his dirty dish and dropped it in the sink. I noticed that there was a gun on his recliner. What's this? I grabbed it. My grandfather was a correctional officer in his later years before he retired. It was a service pistol.
That's my gun.
Why are you sitting on it? He walked back over to me and took it from my hand.
It's mine. I could do with it what I want.
Grandpa, you can't...
I'm tired of everyone telling me what I can't do. Everybody else is just sitting around, waiting for me to die,
he yelled, and then he was silent for a moment before he collected himself. When he spoke again, his voice was low, almost a whisper.
Please, don't act like your mother. For the love of God, never act like your father. Outside of your grandmother and your brother, you have always been the best thing in my life. You're all I've got left, son. Please treat me like a grown man. I'm not crazy.
He did that thing that good men do. His lips quivered and his eyes got wet. His voice was on the verge of breaking, but he refused to cry. Not because he thought it was weak, but because he didn't like the thought of his feelings being a burden to anyone. I'll make sure they're good.
What?
The vents.
Thank you. I'm sorry I yelled at you.
It's all right. I deserved it.
A man's got a right to defend his house, doesn't he, Jay?
Yes, he does, Grandpa. I knew that I was going to be about an hour late for class, but I found my grandfather's drill gun, and I dug out his ladder. I sunk 10 screws into the vents. I had a little bit of a hard time with the last one. There was a tree growing right next to the back of the house, and it wasn't really difficult to get the ladder in a decent position. It took me a while to get to it. I almost considered climbing the tree rather than using the ladder. It certainly would have been easier. Once I had all the tools put away, I walked inside. Grandpa?
Yeah?
Here, look. I took a picture of each one on my phone so you could see that it's done. Some of them are a little blurry because of the flash reflecting off the metal. I handed him my phone.
Yeah, it's getting dark out there.
He inspected the first one and then handed the phone back to me.
I don't need to look at them, Jay. I trust you.
I want you to take a shower and relax. They're secure.
Nothing getting in or out of those guys. Thank you, Jay.
You're welcome. I'm late for school. I'll be back tomorrow. I'm cleaning this place top to bottom. It smells in here.
Yeah, I know it. I think a lot of it is coming from when they get in the vents.
Well, we don't have to worry about that anymore, right?
Yep.
We're also going to fix all those holes in the ceiling. I don't want you poking anymore.
I won't.
Grandma wouldn't be happy with you running around destroying the house. He smiled at me and his lips started to quiver again.
No. I suppose she wouldn't. I love you, son.
I love you too, Grandpa. I'll be back tomorrow. I had a nightmare that night. When my brother and I were younger, my grandpa loved to tell us scary stories next to the fireplace at night. The dream felt so real. My grandmother was sitting in her chair with my little brother in her lap while I sat on the floor. They were both from Iowa, and he was telling his favorite story, one that both of my grandparents grew up with. The axe murders of Villisca, Iowa. A long time ago, a man hid away in an attic of a large ranch house out in the middle of nowhere. He stayed there all day. The police found multiple cigarette butts in the attic, proving that the murderer just sat up there all day waiting for the family who lived in the house to go to sleep. Once they were asleep, he murdered them all with an axe, and the killer was never caught. When my grandfather finished the story, I turned around and saw that my brother and my grandmother had both disappeared. I asked my grandfather where they went, and he pulled out his gun.
The man in the attic got them.
I woke up in a cold sweat in the back seat of my car. Something wasn't right. It wasn't the dream. It was something else. I picked up my phone and dialed my grandfather, but there was no answer. I couldn't shake a feeling of fear that had come over me, a terrifying knot in the pit of my stomach. I was sweating. I felt like I missed something. I stepped out of my car and had a cigarette while I tried to get a handle on my thoughts. I was halfway through it when the flesh on the back of my neck started to tingle as if someone was watching me. The pictures. I grabbed my phone. I opened my pictures and looked at the ones I had taken for my grandfather. When I got to the last one, my heart dropped. I was staring at a monster. I jumped in my car. My hands were shaking on the wheel. I have never felt fear like that since. It took me 7 minutes to drive to my grandfather's house. When I pulled down my grandfather's street, it was filled with police cars. Neighbors were standing in groups outside of a police line. I stopped my car and ran underneath the police tape that was around my grandfather's house. 2 cops stopped me and I explained who I was. The detective dressed in a suit walked over to me.
What happened?
You're the grandson?
Yes. Where's my grandpa?
Son, I need to ask you some questions. We've been trying to get a hold of your parents, but we can't find them.
They're on vacation somewhere.
Okay, well, as far as we know...
Where is my grandpa?
I hate to tell you this, but your grandfather was murdered. My legs were rubber, and my hand went to my mouth.
How?
What time did you leave your grandfather's last night?
Sometime around 5.
It was a struggle to stand. Did you notice anything strange about the house while you were here?
No.
Why were you here so late? Neighbors told us you always come and leave at the same time every day. They said you were here over an hour later than usual.
He's on this new heart medication and it makes him hallucinate. He kept telling me for weeks that people were trying to get into his attic. He's losing it. So after a few weeks of lying, last night I finally put a bunch of screws into his gable vents so no one could get in.
Okay, we've apprehended a disturbed individual that we believe was living in your grandfather's attic for quite some time. I felt like throwing up.
Oh my God.
He'd come out every night and go back in before morning. Looks like he was using the oak tree out back to climb to and from. Apparently, he was in there when you screwed in all the vents and he couldn't get out. So a few hours ago, he crawled out through the inside of the house, down through the attic access. Your grandfather must have heard him because he tried to shoot the intruder. He grazed him once, but the man was able to disarm your grandfather. And then it appears he beat your grandfather to death with the access panel. I am so sorry. I staggered over to one of the cruisers and sat on the front bumper. I took out my phone as the detective stood over me. We were trying to find some contact information on you. How did you know something was wrong?
I took some pictures last night to prove to my grandfather that the vents were secure. I woke up and I took another look at them.
I handed the phone to the detective. He looked at the picture. The last photo had a slight glare from the flash on my phone. If you looked closely, you could see a blurry face hiding behind the vent. The face of the monster that took my grandfather. The painting was strange, to say the least. It hung in the attic of the old mansion, where no one had gone for years. But when Jenna and her friends found it, they were instantly captivated. It was a portrait of a woman, dressed in an old-fashioned gown, with a wide-brimmed hat and a stern expression. Her eyes seemed to follow Jenna and her friends as they walked around the room. As the days went by, Jenna couldn't shake the feeling that the painting was somehow alive. She couldn't explain it, but every time she looked at it, she felt a chill run down her spine. One night, Jenna woke up to find the painting in her room. She tried to scream, but no sound came out. The woman in the painting started to move, her mouth opening as if to speak. Jenna was paralyzed with fear. She couldn't move, couldn't scream, couldn't do anything. The woman stepped out of the painting and started to walk towards her. Suddenly, Jenna was transported to a different time and place. She was in the same mansion, but everything was different. The walls were stained with blood, and the air was thick with the scent of death. The woman from the painting was there, standing in front of Jenna. Her eyes were empty, and she didn't speak. She just stared at Jenna with a cold, unfeeling gaze. Jenna tried to run, but she couldn't move. The woman started to walk towards her, her steps slow and deliberate. Just as the woman was about to touch Jenna, she woke up. She was back in her own bed, in her own room, but the painting was still there, staring at her with those empty eyes. Jenna knew she had to get rid of the painting. She called a friend to help her, and they took it to a thrift store to donate it. But as Jenna was leaving the store, she saw something that made her blood run cold. The woman from the painting was standing outside, staring at her with those same cold, unfeeling eyes. From that day on, Jenna never saw the painting again, but she knew that it was still out there, waiting for its next victim to come along. And that, dear listeners, is the end of this collection of horror. If you are sleeping, I hope Slumberland is treating you well. If you are listening to this and not sleeping, I hope you enjoyed this collection of stories. Until next time, I'll read to you soon. Have a great day, a great afternoon, or a great night.